Hello, and I'm going to be explaining to you how I've set up my collision model, and it's basically based on the one from Street Fighter, which is pretty standard, and also it's all over the place. And you can see the collision model here, and all of it has been set to custom. So of course, if you're trying to make a fighting game, you should really be quite proficient with Unreal Engine, unless you're like me and you're just a bit mad and you don't stop until you get things right. But yeah, I've even seen people at EGX, professionals making games, and I've seen them get some things wrong with collision models. Right, so if I go into viewport and show you this collision model, right, first I'll start off by showing you the capsule. Obviously this is the capsule that comes standard with the characters, and I've gone into collision along here, gone down to collision presets and set it to custom. Alright, and if I go through all of this with you, most of it is going to be set to ignore. So if you ain't using it, ignore, and some things will cause glitches if they're set to anything else. Right, visibility isn't an essential one, that's an ignore. I've got camera on block, but that could quite just as easily be over there. That could be on ignore. But I've got other things in my game that are going to see characters through the camera channel, so that's on block. World static, which is pretty essential, because if I didn't have that set to block, the character would fall through the floor. That just happens to be the channel I've decided to use in the level. So when you're making a fighting game, you have to be careful of the collision in everything in the level, basically. World dynamic. Now, world dynamic, that's very important. That's the channel that I'm using to actually transmit the damage, and I've got it set to ignore, because this capsule is not the thing I'm using to transmit damage. And pawn, I have that set to block, so to prevent you from walking through the character. In fact, because I've got a bit of a glitch with these hands, if I go too close to a character and the hands touch them, the camera goes a bit nuts. So I should really make that collision model, the capsule, a little bit wider to encompass the hands as well. But then again, if you're making a fighting game like a standard side scroller one, that shouldn't matter, because it's not connected to the mesh, it's like floating outside them. And physics body definitely has to be on ignore. And vehicle and destructible, I'm not using them, so I just stuck them on ignore in case they cause any problems later on. And these three are the hurt boxes: the high, mid and low. Alright, when you're playing Tekken and you're on the practice level and it says high, mid and low to tell you where the hits are landing, well, that's going to be done through these. Now the collision model for these is quite interesting, right? Because again, custom collision model, custom collision preset, like everything else in this, and everything is on ignore except world's dynamic, which is on overlap, not block, not ever block, because otherwise you're going to end up with that glitch where causes your characters to go flying thousands of feet into the air and then take 10 minutes to come back down. So that brings me on to how I'm actually causing the damage, what is coming into these to cause that. And I've got nothing on there. I've got no collision models on the hands and feet. So you'll be asking what I'm doing. Well, what I am doing is I've got this function here, and one of the sockets is selected in this, and we're getting the position of the socket and putting a sphere trace for objects on there. I've got this make array set to world dynamic, of course, because that's what I'm using to transmit the damage. I've got my interface set up, and out hit actor, using that to get the character, well, transmit the damage basically. These interfaces are very good for getting characters. I usually search for actors by interface. It's actually, you end up having to use a for each loop, but I've never had any problems with it. It really doesn't seem to cause any performance problems. And as you may have guessed, this is fired off by a anim montage. Yeah. What are they bloody called again? Yeah, fired off by a notify and anim montage. So I've got a notify and anim montage that I've added, which sets off this, and of course it goes into there, goes through the system. But I've also got pulse. Now, pulse is from another function that I've made up, and it sets off this timer, and what that does is it pulses them until it hits something. I could actually stick a boolean in there, so I could say it to keep going until the animation ends. If I wanted to hit loads of people, I'll probably do that later. But I think that wraps up everything. I think that's that's all of it really. I mean, I could show you how it works, couldn't I? Like with this turning kick, usually at some point the character would end up flying through the air. You see, I've got that arc coming there. I mean, it's not working quite right yet, so I'm not going to do a tutorial on montages yet because I haven't done it for ages. Yeah, I've got that arc going there. That's the pulse, and the single one is done through the punches. You see, it's landing every time. Had I used normal collision models like a sphere attached to the hand, it wouldn't work so good. So yeah, I hope you found this video useful. I might do something with the animations when I start getting them right and really got the hang of it. Yeah, thanks for watching.